Okay. So, hi everyone, and thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to attend today. This is going to be a lot of great information, and Mackenzie and Vicky will give you lots of information, and it will be very helpful, I am sure. So, I am Michelle Zich. I am the Workforce Development Specialist at the PA Key. And I am just glad you're here. And there's going to be a lot of information. At the end, I will email out a copy of this webinar, and then I will send you a copy of the PowerPoint as well. So you will have all of that. All right, now I'll go ahead and kick it over to Mackenzie and Vicky.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you everyone for joining us. I know it is a crazy time of year with weather, sicknesses, all of the above. So thank you for making the time to join us and to learn about the role of the PD specialist in regards to the CDA credentialing process. So I'll start by introducing myself and then I'll pass it over to my colleague Vicky to introduce herself. But my name is Mackenzie Pelland. I'm the director of the EC Observation Systems team here at the Council for Professional Recognition. We are the body who credentials or who implements the credentialing process for the CDA or Child Development Associate. My team is responsible for the verification visit portion of the credentialing process, which we'll go over in more depth very shortly. So you'll learn all about that. And I am located in Richmond, Virginia. So just a little bit south of you guys. And I'll pass it over to Vicky to introduce herself.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Vicki Rosinski. I'm the EC Observation Systems Manager. So as Mackenzie said, part of this team that supports PD specialists anytime you are emailing or calling. We're the faces behind that. We do have a couple of other colleagues that support as well. So a small but mighty team here to support PD specialists and all that they do for us. And I'm located here in Westfield, Indiana.
Thank you, Vicki. All right, so our objectives for today are really to start by identifying the role of the PD specialist in the CDA credentialing process. So we'll walk you through the CDA credentialing process as a whole, in case you're not familiar with it, and where that PD specialist fits in. We'll review some council policy updates because we get a lot of questions about relevant council policies in relation to the PD specialist work. And overall, we're just really here to hopefully inspire you to become a PDS or to share this information with your network if you maybe don't think this is the right time for you or, work-wise, you're not able to. Potentially, there's other folks that you may know who could be interested in this information. So with that, I will start with the CDA process and the role of the PD specialist. So we call the CDA as the best first step. So the CDA is the most widely recognized credential in ECE. It is a national credential, so folks who obtain it can transfer it if they move state to state. It is a key stepping stone on the path of career advancement in early childhood education. So we don't think it's the final step, but the best first step for individuals who are thinking about a career in ECE. The CDA is based on a core set of competency standards that guide ECE professionals towards becoming qualified educators of young children. So we have those competency standards, and that's actually what PD specialists use during the credentialing process to actually score candidates. It's all based on our competency standards, so everything's competency based. And we work to ensure that it is nationally transferable and recognized, as I mentioned, and that it maintains a credible and valid credential that is recognized by the profession as a vital part of professional development. And a key part of the role or of the process of the CDA in obtaining this credential is the role of the PD specialist. So I wanted to start by just giving you a brief overview of the CDA credentialing process and then kind of highlight where that verification visit or observation takes place. So first and foremost, and there should be 4 settings on here. I'm not sure why there's not, but a candidate starts by determining which credential they would like to apply for. So we have 4 credentials. We have infant toddler, center-based infant toddler, which is birth through 36 months. We have center-based preschool, which is for ages 3 to 5 years old. We have family childcare, which is birth to 5. And then we also have a home visitor credential, which is where for home visitor settings, candidates are actually observed interacting with the parents when they go and do a family visit. So we do have a credential for home visitor. All of those credential types have a competency standards book associated with them where there's information about the application process, information about the competency standards, and every candidate is required to have a competency standards book in order to start the application process because there's key information in there and scoring rubrics that they need to complete the process. So they start by identifying essentially what they would like their credential to be in, and it's based on their work experience and what they've received training in. Anytime before they apply for the credential, they must possess a minimum of a high school diploma or GED, but we do offer CTE, career technical education programs for folks who are, in high school and doing those programs. So they could be a junior or senior enrolled in a high school program. And then they also need to complete 120 hours of education in relation to the 8 CDA subject areas. That also needs to be specific to the age group of the credential that they select. So we have competency standards. Those kind of feed into our subject areas, and they need to receive training in accordance with the subject areas. Then within 3 years of getting their credential, they just need to have completed 480 hours of work experience in the setting and age group of the credential that they select. That ends up being about 4 to 6 months of work experience, depending on how many hours they work. And within 6 months of applying, they need to complete their professional portfolio, and all of the guidelines for the portfolio are in the competency standards book. And then gather family questionnaires. Worksheets for those are in the competency standards book as well. And those are a part of the professional portfolio. So that's all the prep work that they do. Then they actually apply for the CDA credential. That's done online. We do have a paper application as well, but majority of our candidates use our online application process. They go in, select what their languages they'd like their credential to be in, their credential type, get their director's permission. And that's also where they select a PD specialist. So before they pay for their application, they do select a PD specialist. Those PD specialists, and I'll just highlight here since we've started where the PDSs come in. Those PD specialists can be found on our directory. So we have a directory online that candidates have access to, and they can search and see how far away a PD specialist who meet their requirements are from them, and they reach out, see if they're available. If the PD specialist is available to complete their visit, they'll give them what we call an endorsement number. The candidate adds the endorsement number to their application, and then they're essentially matched. Once the candidate has paid their fee, they're ready to go, they receive a ready to schedule notice. The PDS will also receive that as well, which means that they're ready to schedule their visit, but they're also ready to schedule their exam. So the demonstrate phase of the CDA credentialing process consists of 2 assessments. One is the verification visit, which is the observation that we're talking about today. And then the other one is an actual exam that they go and take at a Pearson VUE Center. There's many located across the state of Pennsylvania, but all over the country. The exam is relevant to the credential type that they selected. And so that's all done on their own. They go and schedule that. But the verification visit is scheduled with the PD specialist in our system. You can go in and kind of propose dates. PD specialists are able to set their calendar, have blackout dates, that kind of a thing. And once that's scheduled, that's when the verification visit process moves forward. Our verification visit consists of what we call our ROR model, which is review, observe, and reflect. So the beginning of the verification visit, the PD specialist reviews the professional portfolio that I mentioned earlier. So reviewing the kind of like essays and statements that the candidate has written, ensuring that they have all their required documentation, family questionnaires. Then they move into a 2-hour observation. They use what we call a comprehensive scoring instrument, which is based on our competency standards to review the candidate. The candidate is acting as the lead teacher, even if they're not the lead teacher during this verification visit. So the PD specialist sits, and observes for 2 hours the candidate interacting with children, leading a lesson, doing transitions, whatever may be happening during the day, and scores the candidate based on those 2 hours. And then at the very end, there's what we call a reflective dialogue. So that rounds out our review, observe, reflect, where the candidate and the PD specialist actually discuss their areas of strength, growth. This is not a scored part of the process. This is something that is more just meant for the candidate to kind of think through what they want to do professionally. They can set goals with the PD specialist, and that's approximately an hour, but kind of depends on how interested the candidate is in the conversation. So we're not strict on that timeline. And then last but not least, those scores, so scores of the CSI, the comprehensive scoring instrument that the PD specialist completes during the visit, and then the scores of the exam come together to determine a credentialing decision. So it's not just based on the observation or just based on the exam. All of those come together, and we have a comprehensive scoring matrix that we use to determine the credentialing decision. So who are these PD specialists? So PD specialists are degreed or credentialed early education professionals. They have proven knowledge and experience to support ECE professionals. We have some education and work experience requirements that ensures this. Many are recognized for their professional contributions to the ECE field. And they're really individuals who want to be mentors, want to be coaches. They've fostered the professional growth of others, and they want to give back to the ECE community by working with largely our CDA candidates are, the newest batch of folks entering the ECE workforce. And so PD specialists have a really great opportunity to be one of the first individuals who observes these candidates, who talks to them about their professional growth and kind of sets them up on a step or on a path to success in the ECE field. So who makes a great PD specialist? Honestly, probably most of you on this call, I would say would make great PD specialists. If you're working in early education or you've been a child development specialist, you enjoy working, mentoring, coaching, meeting new people, being in new centers, you have a professional approach to work and mentorship, someone who really understands the dynamics of classroom and teacher observations. So we have a lot of folks who have done observations previously, whether they're class, licensors, those, even a lot of center directors who are PD specialists. And at the end of the day, just really enjoys working with aspiring ECE professionals. As I mentioned, you're one of the first people to really mentor, coach, and observe these candidates as they start their ECE journey or as they work to cement their work experience in the form of a credential. And so I find it to be just a really rewarding experience and a way to, as I mentioned, give back to the ECE workforce in a time where I think we can all agree it desperately needs it. So that is the PD specialist. And I know I went through this fast. We're going to have time for Q&A at the end. And I also have a one-pager in both English and Spanish that we'll share at the end that includes all of this information. So especially if you know someone who might be interested, that could be a good resource to share with them. But I wanted to give you a sense of the state of the CDA in Pennsylvania so you get a sense of the need. So this is the data that we currently have of PD specialists. It is very small. I apologize. I was trying to fit every city that we have a PDS in on this one slide, but wanted to give you a sense that we have a total of 258 PD specialists right now in Pennsylvania, which may seem like a lot, but keep that number in the back of your mind, 258. And then I wanted to show you where they're located. If you don't see potentially the county or city that you're located in on this list, that means that we don't have a PDS there. So I only included active PDSs that we have in our system on this list. So I'll give you a minute to kind of look, see if you can find your city And again, if it's not on there, that means we really need you. Or if your city only has one PDS, that means they're really serving all candidates in that area by themselves. Okay, so we have 258. That's our total number, but I wanted to give you a sense of how many verification visits we do or that are conducted in Pennsylvania. So in 2024, we had almost 1,400, so 1,357 verification visits completed in 2024. So those 258 PD specialists are completing all of these verification visits. So I just wanted to give you a sense that there's a need. Even though it may seem like 200 plus is a lot, there's a lot of candidates coming down the pike, especially in Pennsylvania. So we always need more PD specialists. You'll see here, I did it by the credential type. There is particularly a need for center-based preschool and center-based infant toddler verification visits. Those are our most popular, which is not too surprising. That's kind of what we've seen nationwide. We've seen normally it was like center-based preschool was our highest verification visit number. Infant toddler is really creeping up there though. We have a lot of infant toddler candidates. And so if you do have experience, and we'll get into eligibility requirements, Vicki will take that in a minute. If you do have experience in center-based infant toddler, that's a huge need right now, nationwide, but particularly in Pennsylvania. So wanted to give you a sense of visits. And then in case you're interested, also a sense of the language specialization that we're seeing. So as a credential, we do offer the credential in English, in Spanish. It can also be in bilingual English, Spanish, and it can also be bilingual English, other language, not Spanish. And we also have monolingual other language as well, as long as there's a PDS who is able to complete the visit in that language. And so right now, and this is just Pennsylvania data, you're seeing a lot in English, but we do have a fair amount of bilingual and then a smaller amount of monolingual Spanish. I could see that rising in the coming years. And so if you do know of anyone who is bilingual or even just Spanish only, that's also a need that we are starting to see more and more of in Pennsylvania. But majority of the verification visits last year were in English. All right, I've been talking a lot, so I'm going to pass it over to Vicki to talk about why do this and some of the eligibility requirements associated with becoming a PDS.
Awesome. Thanks, Mackenzie. All right. So yeah, why become a PD specialist? We'll start off with a couple of quotes from current PD specialists. This particular quote comes to us from Puerto Rico, just sharing how being a PDS offers them an opportunity to give back as a coach, as a mentor, but also they're being poured into by the candidates, and they're a better professional because of that. And then our next quote, I love this quote, because as you'll see here, they say that being a PD specialist is their occupation. Again, it just gives them a space and an opportunity to just share their expertise in the early childhood field. So as being a PD specialist, you have the ability to utilize your experience, your expertise, as you saw from that quote, to have a hand in ensuring that the best of the best are ascending throughout the field of education. Not only do you have the opportunity to work with the candidates, but you have the opportunity to engage with your colleagues and a great community of professionals that we've built over in some of our platforms here at the council. There's no fee to join, and you also have the flexibility to create your own schedule. That's another perk to being a PD specialist. And then as a reward for all of your work and your effort, you would receive a $100 honorarium payment for each verification visit completed. And then we do also reimburse for travel expenses for travel over 50 miles one way. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, but that is another opportunity to be reimbursed for any travel exceeding the 50 miles. So now we'll kind of break down eligibility. You see we have 4 buckets here. We have knowledge, technology, experience, and education. So we'll first talk about knowledge. We ask that you have an understanding of your local and the national standards for childcare programs. Next, for technology, it's really critical that you have an active email address and access to the internet. Not only will you need to be active in our system called Your Counsel, like Mackenzie mentioned, you're entering in scores and other information into our system, but you're also going to be doing a lot of communication with our team, with the candidates, maybe with our customer service team. So you really need to have that dedicated line to do that. And then experience, you need to have worked with children birth to 5 in the setting that you're choosing. And then we do ask that you have facilitated some growth of another adult. And then finally, for education, there's a lot here, so I'll try to break this down. You need to either have a CDA or a bachelor's or an associate's in ECE or child development, elementary education with an ECE focus, or a home economics with a child development focus. Of course, these are not all of the degrees that we do accept, but if it doesn't fall into one of those larger buckets, we do ask that the degree has at least 18 semester hours or 24 quarter hours in that ECE child development with the specialization of the birth through 5 setting. All right, so now we'll kind of get down into the endorsement types. As Mackenzie also mentioned earlier, we have 4 different types. We have center-based infant toddler, center-based preschool, family child care, and home visitor. When you start your application, you will apply and ask to choose one endorsement type. So whichever one fits you the most right now, we ask that you start with that. However, let's say you start with preschool, but you do have some family child care experience. Once you complete your application, you'll have the opportunity to add in another one or all 3 additional endorsement types. And so we have a link where you can just provide us some additional work experience, some additional questions that we ask, and then we will be able to add, once we verify that work experience, we can add those additional endorsements to your profile. So we see people, they have one and that's great, or they have all 4 types of endorsement types. So that's okay too. We just need you to pick one to start with, complete your application, and then we can add the others down the line.
And Vicki, I'll just add quickly here that if you are interested in the home visitor endorsement type, so you have home visitor experience, I would recommend starting with that one because that means that you will then there is a different training for home visitor PD specialist because the verification visit looks a bit different because you're going into someone's home and working with a parent. So you will take that training that also encompasses the other trainings. So if you're interested in home visitor, I'd start with that one because then there's no extra training that you have to take later. But if you would like to add on home visitor, there is an additional training that you would need to complete when you add that. Either one, it's not a big deal, but just a tip to start with that one if you're interested in it.
Good one. Thanks, Kinsey. All right, so we have 3 payment designations, so 3 different ways that you can be paid. We have honorarium, volunteer, and agency. Our most common, I would say, is honorarium. This type of the PDS is an independent contractor, so we would actually pay you as the PD specialist the $100 directly for each completed verification visit. This type does show up on that PDS search tool that we mentioned earlier. So if a candidate is searching for a PDS as an honorarium, you would show up on that map. And then volunteer, no payment is issued. However, you do still show up on the PDS search tool. And then finally, we have agency. This payment type is a little different. You're not paid directly as the PD specialist. However, your agency that you would be associated with, they receive the payment. This one is a little unique because you do not show up on the PDS search tool because the agency or the organization, they have their own pool of PD specialists to work from. They're sharing that number with the candidate and it stays within that pool of PD specialists. We do those, and I will say the agency, those visits are typically done on work time. So that's also what makes that one a little bit unique. You can have one or all 3 payment designation types on your profile. So you could be part of an agency doing those visits on work time. The payment is going towards your employer, but you could also have an honorarium and maybe doing a visit off on your off day or later in the afternoon, and then you would be able to be paid and compensated directly. So you can have all different types of the payment designations on your profile. Kind of go through this one quickly or do another recap. Mackenzie explained it really well earlier. As a PD specialist, it is your responsibility to utilize this ROR model during the verification visits. And that does stand for the review, observe, and reflect. So again, the review portion, you're going in, taking that first solid hour of just being in a quiet space, reviewing the portfolio, making sure all of those documents and resources are there. The next 2 hours, you're observing the candidate as the lead teacher in the classroom. And then that final time is spent just reflecting with the candidate, talking through their goals, their professional, goals. And that can take an hour or however long it feels to get those goals talked about. And then after the visit, you'll use that rubric, the CSI, to put those scores into our system, which is your council. And then those scores, Mackenzie said, aligned with the exam are what makes the credentialing decision. All right, so some relevant council policies. Once you become a PD specialist, you will receive a PDS manual. It's available both English and Spanish. We'll now kind of cover some of those relevant policies, and then these are also our most commonly asked about for sure. So we'll start off with conflict of interest. Here we've shown all of the times that you may not serve as a PD specialist for a candidate. I won't read all these word for word, but basically you're not to have like a direct relationship with the candidate. So not a relative, no direct supervisors, you haven't been their PD specialist in the past, not their employer. You don't want that parent-teacher relationship if you have a child in the classroom. So these are all of the items of when you cannot serve as a PD specialist. And then next we have our remote travel updates. As mentioned earlier, we do reimburse for travel. So verification visits over 50 miles one way are eligible for mileage reimbursement. And then travel over 100 miles one way is eligible for mileage, lodging, and per diem. And both are based on our approval system. And so mileage, per diem, and lodging rates are based off of the federal GSA rate. So currently mileage is 70 cents, and then per diem and lodging is based off of the zip code of the verification visit. And so the next slide kind of shows our part of our approval process. We do ask that you submit a reimbursement request form. Our team reviews all of the information that's input to this form, and that helps us approve or deny based off of what's here. And then once your verification is complete, you would submit an expense form to us, and then we would reimburse for those mileage expenses. And then finally, we get asked often how many visits a PD specialist can conduct. And as you can see here, you can conduct 2 visits per day, and we no longer have a weekly cap. So the only cap we have is that you cannot conduct more than 2 per day.
So I guess the cap would be like 14 technically.
14. I guess we technically do have a cap.
I don't think
right?
people do that, but there used to be a cap at 3 visits per week. So that's why we say this. Some people still have that misconception. There is no weekly cap.
All right. So we went through a lot of information. You know a little bit about eligibility now. The good thing is all of this information is on our website, so I'll give you that at the end, so you can find everything there. And then additionally, we have step-by-step instructions on our YouTube channel. So the next steps that I would take once you decide that you want to become a PD specialist, you just want to gather all of your materials. So any transcripts, work history, and then you're going to go visit our website and you're going to apply directly there. And then once you're approved, you would be directed to take our training, which is self-led. Typically takes about 4 to 6 hours, just depending on your availability. And then it does end with an assessment. And then after that, you're endorsed as a PD specialist. As long as you're honorarium or volunteer, candidates can find you on our PDS search tool, and you can start conducting visits.
And I'll just add for the endorsement period is that PD specialists are endorsed for a 2-year time period and then are eligible for renewal. There's just a quick refresher training that we ask PD specialists take, sign a new contract with us. And so our renewal period is every 2 years. And Vicki will put in the chat, we have a one-pager with all this information that also has a QR code and links to all of this. And when you get the slides, you'll be able to click in as well. But we also did want to share that we have a council alumni network. It's called CAN. The name is deceiving because it's not just for CDA alumni. It's for anyone who is interested in learning more about the CDA or being a part of the credentialing community. So if you're interested in additional webinars provided by the council, if you do become a PDS, we have a group on there just for PDSs where we post information. People can kind of go in, chat about verification visits. It's kind of like a Facebook page for the council. We do quarterly coffee chats with PDSs. We have one tomorrow, actually. So if you're interested in being more a part of like a community type networking page with the council, just visit councilcan.org and you'll be able to create an account, log in there. But again, that is separate from the actual PDS application. This is just getting more information, being a part of our webinars, but wanted to provide you that information as well. And with that, I will open it up to questions and answers. I can't see the chat because I'm sharing my screen, so I'll have, if anything has come in on the chat, Vicki, if you wouldn't mind just letting me know. But if not, feel free to come off mute and let us know if you have any questions.
I will say in the chat, I also put the council's website to where you can directly go to apply. And then I did put our team's email, the EC Observation Systems team email, so pds@cdacouncil.org. If you do have questions, even beyond this, please feel free to reach out to our team. So I don't see anything in the chat, but I do see a couple of hands raised.
Looks like Monica, are you able to come off mute?
Yes, thank you. So my question has to do with the home visitor CDA. So that I am supervising home visitors and have been for about 8 years. My prior experience was 20 years having my own family childcare. So, but my degree is not in ECE. So I'm wondering if that's an option as well, or do I now have to go back and take some ECE credits? You know, of course, over the last 28 years, I've been taking classes every year. So I'm just wondering.
Yeah, I would say still apply. We have a comprehensive review process where we do look at work experience in addition to degree. Also, even if your degree is not so I'll give you an example. My degree is in politics and education. So my degree is not like the name of it is not early childhood. But in my transcripts, I have early childhood credits. So we actually will take the time and look through transcripts if that's something that you have and would like to upload. But I would say please still apply. We look holistically at the application to ensure that we're making a credit or endorsement decision. So I would say you're probably in a good spot.
So with my degree, and it doesn't have any ECE credits, but I do have my PD registry for over
I would
last
recommend
20
you
years.
can upload that. Yeah.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Thank you.
Good question. Michelle?
Yes, hi. So I have a question about conflict of interest. So I had already asked, and I think it was Michelle that responded to me to let me know, because I teach the CDA at one of the local colleges. So we've already addressed that I wouldn't be able to review my own students, which I get, totally fine. But here's my other question. So I am a quality coach for in Pennsylvania. So I have a caseload of programs. However, I generally work with the administrators, not the teachers. So would I not review staff that work at one of my caseloads programs, or how does
No,
that?
it's a good question. We get that question a lot. And really, I would say it's like number 5 that comes into it for you is as long as you don't have a contractual interest related to their like moving up and getting the credentials. So for example, we've had some CCR&R coaches reach out to us and they're like, can I do my caseload but I'm based on, they have key performance indicators, and one of their indicators they're assessed on is if their candidates get credentialed. And so inherently there's a little bit of conflict of interest there. So as long as that is not the case and you don't have a relationship with these candidates, then it's okay. So
Right.
it's just being mindful of like what your contract
Right.
doing that coaching it specifies in terms of, what metrics you're assessed on.
Sure, sure. Gotcha. Yeah, our generally the staff's credentials have nothing to do with, you know, our performance, if you
Okay.
will.
Yeah, then that would be okay. As long as that contractual interest, you're not benefiting from their
Right, right.
credentialing decision. Essentially, what I always like to say is like there's going to be so many situations. We get so many questions about conflict of interest, but at the end of the day, we're also relying on your best interest here. It's like if you're able to be an objective observer for this candidate, that's really all we're asking for because we want to ensure that the credentialing process is valid and reliable. So as long as you're able to be that objective observer and you're not upscoring them because it helps you or whatnot, that's really the key here for the conflict of interest.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we did have
I,
a. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Megan.
Megan.
Hi. So I have mentored some teachers when I was ahead of school and in the past, and sometimes they had life situations that prevented them from finishing the program. I don't know what kind of success rate you have. They couldn't get the traction they needed to in order to finish. I tried to encourage them as much as I could, but how do you help with this particular program?
Yeah, was it they weren't necessarily finishing the training or the application process?
The training, and they had to
Yeah,
present
that's
materials to
difficult. So
me.
what's nice is that they are able to, training can be taken anytime prior to applying. So they are able to, if they took 100 hours for whatnot at a training organization and then they weren't able to finish, but then 2 years later they can complete their next 20 hours, they can combine both of those and apply for the CDA credential and just put that in their portfolio. So it is difficult. We don't actually monitor in terms of working hand in hand with training organizations. What we do is if you were to become a PD specialist in your training, you kind of see what we look for in terms of training requirements. But we're not the ones actually doing the CDA credentialing training. So it's a little bit difficult in terms of our relationship with the training
Right. Okay.
programs, but I think it is a very accessible credential in that way. There's a lot of life experiences that happen for the community that we're working with in terms of trying to get them to their credentials. So we try to make it as easy as possible in terms of mixing and matching those training hours and ensuring that even if they did it a few years ago, they're still able to use that as long as they have proof of completion.
I feel like in some of the schools that we've had teachers going through the CDA program, there hasn't been a person that came to the school to observe them. Am I like, I'm trying to think that it was something that I didn't, I feel like I should know this, but I feel like it wasn't always we had people coming to observe their, their progress.
Hmm.
Is that possible?
They wouldn't have received a credential without an observation. So they may have just been doing training, but then didn't actually apply for the credential, like doing the 100
There
hours,
you go.
20
Okay, that
hours,
makes
and
sense.
then didn't actually get credentialed. That could be the case, but I'm not sure. But yeah, you
Okay,
would need to have that observation
okay.
and take the test too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mackenzie, I was going to say there was a chat asking about the qualification slide. It had a check mark next to the CDA and just asking if that was a requirement for all specialists to possess.
No.
And I did say
Good
in the chat,
question.
it's not a requirement. It is a really great question. It is something that we recently did add. That if you do have your CDA, that can count as your education towards becoming a PD specialist, but not a requirement.
Yeah, that's a good flag. Maybe we should probably edit that slide. And there are, we didn't get, it gets really in the weeds on eligibility requirements, but what Vicky put in the chat is a good place to look is that there are then work experience year requirements tied to your degree. So if you have a PhD or a master's, there's less work experience required versus if you have your CDA, your bachelor's, AA. But it ranges between 6 and 1 years depending on your degree. So I would recommend just looking at that for more information. Any other questions? All right, well, as Vicki mentioned, she put our email in the chat, so feel free to reach out if any questions come up after this that you didn't think of right now. I wanted to thank you all for
Excuse me.
joining us.
Excuse me, I have a question. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
How long is the training for the CDA specialist?
Yeah, so it is self-guided, so it kind of depends on how long it takes you. We find that it takes most PD specialists about 4 to 6 hours, and you have 30 days to complete it.
Okay. It's just that one for 4 to 6 hours?
Yep, that's it.
Okay.
And then there
All
is a training requirement for renewals. It's a bit shorter of a training, but every 2 years there is another like refresher training requirement.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. I did mention Vicki put in the council website. On our website, there's a newsletter as well if you're interested in getting our council link newsletter. We also, our social media team wants me to share our socials as well. But so if you're interested, here's our handle at all of these. But again, if you do have any PDS specific questions, please reach out to our email address. But if you know candidates who are interested in getting their credential, our customer care team is well equipped to handle all of those, application specific questions, eligibility specific questions. So Megan, that might be a good place to send candidates if you know of any who are interested in proceeding on with their credential and just maybe need a few last training hours to do so. But thank you for your interest just in general in becoming a PD specialist. We're really motivated here at the council to increase the competencies of our EC workforce, but just to get more people in the EC workforce in general. And we feel that the CDA credential is a great way to give candidates or give individuals who are interested in joining the EC workforce, a taste of what it's like to work in a classroom and kind of give them an accessible experience and credentialing experience to see if this is something that they want to move forward and participate in for their career. So we couldn't do it without PD specialists. We are thankful that you're interested. Please share this with anyone who you may know who might be interested. And as mentioned many times, we are here to answer any questions. And I'll pass it back to Michelle. I don't know, Michelle, if there's any last housekeeping stuff required here.
I don't think so. I will send a copy of this recording as well as the PowerPoint. So if you need any of the information that was presented today, it'll be there for you as well. And if you think of any other questions, go ask the council and reach out to the email that they provided. But thank you guys so much for coming. I appreciate everybody.